Since ancient times, women have been the epicenter of their villages and communities around the world, and as such, have been gathering in council to discuss topics relevant to them. Here, we are masterminding and exploring these topics in a modern way with entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches, and just overall good eggs, pun intended. This is The Council. Hello everybody, I am so excited. I am like lit up right now. I just had the most amazing third recording or third episode for the Council podcast and vlog. I don't know, is this a vlog? Like when you, I don't know, I should probably get really clear on what I'm calling this thing, but it was awesome. And my guest, the High Priestess of the day, is Mira Rubin, and she's just a phenomenal woman. She's like low-key magic, I think. And we talked about identity. That was really the main topic today, and it was just super powerful. And we discussed things like the self-identity versus your collective identity, and what was given to you, what was created by you, and how to really let your authentic self out and breathe and not have to stay in your lane of your identity, whatever that may be. So we really dive into those topics. It was just very powerful. There's a lot of depth and insight there. Get ready for a little bit of woo-woo-ness. We go there. Don't judge, but be open. See what resonates with you. I'm positive that something will in this. So I'm very excited. A little bit more about Mira. She is, again, she's low-key magic. Like, I don't know. I think she's a professor at Hogwarts, but that's just my opinion. But no, she is an international best-selling author. She's a transformational coach and a visionary. She's an epic woman. She has like 3 podcasts that she's on. So I will make sure to link those as well. And she also will mention them in the podcast. So you gotta go listen or watch to get that reward, to get more of Mira, which is what you're gonna want after this episode. So, all right, enjoy. I'm gonna stop talking. You'll hear me talk more, but we're gonna have her talking too, so it won't be as much. Okay, goodbye. All right, well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the Council, whether you're watching on video or you are listening on your mobile phone or your computer, wherever you are. Thank you so much. I am super excited about today's guest. It is Mira Rubin. She is an absolutely incredible woman. She does podcasts like it's nobody's business, and she has a profound impact in a community that I'm involved in, as well as the one that she's been creating on her own. So welcome, Mira, to the Council. You are a High Priestess of the day. And I would love if you could tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, Jenna, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation. I like to say I have a checkered past. I have had multiple lives in this one, and the latest incarnation is twofold, really. I had an epiphany in 2017 that connected me with my life's purpose, and that had to do with a vision of an eco park that led me to really understand that I'm taking on the mission of globalizing sustainability practices, which led me into having a podcast, which led me into doing a summit, which led me into meeting all these amazing people, and then being able to give a greater voice to the spiritual component that has been so much a part of my life. And what I mean by that is a curiosity, fascination with consciousness and the nature of consciousness. And so I've developed and formalized a coaching practice out of a modality that I've developed over the past 30 years. And that's led to connecting with a broader community of spiritually minded people, or consciousness evolution oriented people. And so it's feeling very rich and very full and really exciting and on purpose, which is wonderful.
I love that, the on purpose part especially. I mean, only in the couple of sessions that we've done, it's been incredibly impactful, and it's definitely a new way of having a breakthrough. That's what I've experienced. I think I am involved in a lot of different like types of trainings and methodologies to obtain growth and I say obtain like it's something to like grab onto, but to grow and to really develop in. And this was like a totally new way that's, I feel like really connects like mind, soul, and body. So it was really fascinating and really impactful in such a short period of time.
So the work that you're talking about is core connection, and it's something that I've developed over time through creating a synthesis, an alchemy, really, of multiple modalities that I was trained in. So I was trained in hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming and something called One Brain, which incorporated specialized kinesiology, which is a way of muscle testing or communicating with the other than conscious awareness to get actual answers, dialogue, and other things that have evolved to be part of the work over the years. And uh, this work is the most elegant
Mm-hmm.
way to achieve massive transformation that I have yet witnessed. I've seen miraculous things happen out of hypnosis and out of NLP, and a bunch of different modalities, but the impact of this is so profound and lasting because it's generated by you, the client, because it is tapping into your other than conscious awareness to bring forward the symbolism that is necessary to unlock whatever that inner matrix is that's keeping certain behaviors or beliefs or traumas in place.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually kind of perfect as it pertains to our topic today about identity. So there's a lot of things internally that I think who we are, both exteriorly, on the exterior and on the interior, is really related to the identities that we are given and, that we also create. And through your work, it's uncovering a lot of those to understand what are the identities that are serving me and what are those that are not, and what are serving those around me as well. So that it's beautiful. I know, again, like even in our session, just some of those breakthroughs for me that come through, um, is just really really fascinating. So yeah, so I'd love to get into the topic today of identity. So I think just starting from like a really high level for the people watching or listening. So where does identity come from for somebody?
That's a great question. I don't know that there is a definitive answer to that, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll just address what my ideas are. I mean, our identities are we have multiple identities. First of all, it's really important to recognize that we are really none of them. And for instance, what we have is an identity as a son or a daughter, a sister or brother, a sibling, a relative, whatever our job is, we often identify with. We might identify with our bank account, our gender, our race, our culture. So there are layers and layers and layers and layers of all these things that we use to describe ourselves. And often, most often, rather than using them to describe something, we use them to define something.
Mm.
And we believe that we are that description. And so we get our identities within our families, within our cultures, and also from our experiences and our interactions.
Mm. So it's both the self identity and like the collective identity that, or the identity that's really given to you based on how in society, like your race, your religion, your job, your bank account, those things. I think so. Within that context, like I think thinking about how society kind of plays on the identity. Um, how do you think that like what kind of identities do you think that society praises for people?
Achievers. Um, it's interesting because in this country, I was going to say people who are trailblazers, but that's true to a certain degree, but it's also uh, the opposite. People are who are real trailblazers are often victimized for it or
Mm,
often attacked for it.
mm,
Uh, it's very interesting. I think that culturally, especially in the US, our identity and our culture is so oriented around money
mm, mhm,
that that seems to be the primary way of identifying ourselves. Like, what do you do in the world? I am a doctor. I am a teacher. Instead of I work at a hospital, or I teach people. It, we take it on as who we are.
yeah,
I'm I'm a salesperson. I'm a whatever.
yeah,
Instead of I'm a human being and these are things I do, or these are things I think about, or these are things I care about. And one of the things, the reason that this conversation about identity is so important is because we're being called at this very unique time in human history to recreate ourselves. We have identified ourselves within our culture by what we do, what we have,
mm,
uh, and there's a disruption happening now where we hopefully are looking more inward to say, who am I? And I have encountered a bunch of people that are saying, oh my gosh, my world's turned upside down. The things that were all familiar with for me have been taken away or are changed forever. And now I just don't know who I am and what I'm doing here.
mm,
And I think that that is a really powerful, wonderful place to be,
mm,
frankly, because then we get the opportunity to look more deeply. And from my vantage point, who we are is consciousness. And some people will call it spirit or whatever, made manifest through a physical expression. Now, some people think I'm ridiculous for saying that. And that's okay. But I don't believe that I am a meat sack,
meat sack.
you know?
Love that. Yeah. Yeah, I think that we oftentimes it's so easy to get caught up in the physical part of us, in the environment around us. Kind of going back to what you were saying before, like how in our country it's really focused on like the identity that we get most associated with is our status in the world, whether that's from your job, through your bank account, etc., and the different perceptions and judgments that are made, good or bad, on people based on those types of identities. And even right now, I think one thing that's really interesting that we're seeing that's kind of you know a perfect example of like how we are getting opportunity to really re-identify culturally. I think a small example is like during this whole COVID-19, during the pandemic, where we used to, people used to look down on, not always, but like there's a general like there's not as much respect for the grocery store clerk or whomever it is as there is for the doctors or the lawyers or etc. So now it's
Or the sports figures.
yes, exactly, and it's so interesting all of the commercials and things you see. And I saw a message from Obama. He had tweeted out like a video message about just saying like these workers have always been essential. These people have always been essential, and I think that's something that we've really detached from and not prioritized, that everyone is truly essential, and the identity of where you work is not necessarily what is a person's like most authentic self, is really their true identity. Because the identity I see of the essential workers as they're being classified right now I think everyone's an essential worker, but what we're referring to now is that they're hardworking, they're selfless, they are, really motivated to support the world right now when they need it most. Like, it's a very selfless thing that they're doing, no matter what level of essential worker that they're being categorized as. So it's interesting how you were saying that. I just think that this is a really pivotal time for us, both on a like consciousness level in the world, as well as what's actually occurring. Like the breakthrough is palpable.
It is, and actually, you there are two things that I want to respond to. I think you brought up a brilliant insight about the essential workers because it is a matter of shifting values. Right now, we are confronted in an undeniable way with how skewed our values culturally have been, where we will value our movie stars and our athletes over our people that are providing essential services to us on a day by day basis. So all of a sudden, it's saying, wait a second, it's like the world turned topsy turvy. And now I'm starting to get to see what's truly important. And along with that, we've seen a resurgence in concern for our planet, for self sufficiency, for less consumerism, which I am so excited about because I have a big heartfelt uh, connection to sustainability and regeneration of the planet. And it's all dependent on a shift of values. And so people cannot be revering our grocery store clerks and our many other essential workers without revisiting some of the values that we've lived by. So that's huge. And to have people who are truly essential, like teachers, oh my gosh, teachers have been so deeply undervalued in our culture. So to be able to elevate the people that are making these contributions is really profound. That's number one. Number two is we were talking about essential workers and everybody being an essential worker. What about all of us being essential by virtue of being human beings on the planet?
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
And truly recognizing and valuing the gift that we are all here sharing, the gift of life, without sounding too woo woo or airy fairy about it. The truth is that people are waking up more to the preciousness
Mm.
of what's here. And when we go back all the way back around to identity, rather than identifying with what we do and what we have, how about identifying with the fact that we are here as life expressing itself in through us, that we are an expression of life, and by virtue of that there is something sacred to that. And what do we bring as our expression of that, or what we do bring as our expression of life, is in itself a gift to the world. For instance, and people will say, no, that's not true. Some people are worth more than others. We've had case systems throughout history. But if you are a pet owner and you have a pet, you love that pet. That pet doesn't have to do much of anything for you to love that pet. That pet sleeps on your bed maybe, and you love that pet, right? By
Oh,
virtue of it being who it is, right? It eats. It needs to relieve itself. It sheds or it doesn't, but you know,
uh-huh.
just by virtue of being.
Right.
And so when we talk about identity, there's tremendous freedom. First, maybe fear because you don't know who you're going to be Like
Mm,
if you have a role, there are certain ways to play that role. But beyond that, is great freedom by dissociating your identity from the things that are outward
mm,
and allowing who you really are to emerge from inside.
mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. There's the identities, and then there's like that authentic self that really wants to shine through, but often gets stifled for a number of reasons, whether it's fear of really showing that with the world, or just really not being connected to who is my authentic self, because we're so married to the identities that we've whether it's like masks or whatever it is that that phrasing that people want to use. But it's really the things that on the exterior make up who we are. It's like our identity resume versus actually sitting down and having an interview with yourself and understanding who am I, and what do I want in life, and what's most important to me. So how do you think that some of these, because my perception is that a lot of these, outside of, perhaps related to, but outside of just the job and the money, things like that, some of the other identities that people really become, or get attached to, that come from childhood, like what are some of the effects that parents can have in creating their children's identities?
Well, I think a lot of people have issues about not being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can be helped or hindered by a parent. It can be imbued by a parent, or if a parent's saying to a kid, "You are so stupid." So then the identity is, I am stupid. If the parent says, "You're so awesome," it's more likely that that awesomeness will become part of an identity. It's
Mm-hmm.
harder in this culture. One of the reasons is because we're so at the effect of advertising, and we have been conditioned to be consumers, and as a result, or the mechanism of manufacturing us as consumers is by programming us to believe that we're not enough without things, and
Yeah.
that more things are going to make us better
Mm-hmm.
and make us be more. So it's interesting. This was a recent revelation for me that the effectiveness of advertising relies in an assumption that we're not whole and complete without it. So there's some kind of emptiness to fill with things. And I, I can't imagine that anybody has not heard a story from someone who has had everything that they could want and feels empty and and depressed because the things didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because there's a void inside of authentic identity. We can't look outside to find that. And my call is, let's go find out who I really am and express that in the world, instead of letting material interests drive that for me, instead of the advertising companies telling me who I should be. So some of the identities, and they're not, all of them are keeping us from an experience of our deeper selves. But things like, I'm smart, I'm a good student, I'm a good person, because if I'm a good person, maybe I can't be angry. Maybe I can't get angry if I'm a good person. So it's not just negative identities that serve to constrain us, but the boxes that we put ourselves in. I'm an achiever,
Right.
I'm a success, I'm a failure.
Yeah. Yeah, and those things really keep you from, it can keep a person by, like, this is your lane and you need to stay in it. It
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't allow you to get messy and try anything new and fail or perhaps succeed. There's just a lot of limiting beliefs that come with a particular identity. Someone who, dropped out of college can't, I don't know, start a business, or someone who is, gets straight A's can never fail. And the kind of pressure that's created on both ends, or the apathy, there's just so many things that can come from any type of identity. I think that's a really good point, is that it's not just the negative ones, but it can also be, what we and what we deem in culturally really as positive.
Right.
So yeah, and it's interesting something you said too about, yeah, like if a parent says, like you're stupid or something, it's like in my mind I think of this little like trophy shelf that you start putting trophies on as a kid, but and some of them say you're awesome, some of them say you're not worthy, some of them say blah 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 blah, and we just start collecting these and they just live there, and it's like, what is actually the self-imposed trophy? What's your authentic self? Like, what are you actually, aside from all of that, opinions or things said in anger, or, whatever it may have been. So I think questioning, like, for the authentic self, like, can you describe, like, how would you describe the authentic self to people listening or watching?
So, one of the things that we seem to calibrate to uh, in terms of valuing people in society is by accomplishment, externalities, right? So many of us get caught up in doing, 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 doing. And we think that that's a good thing because, of course, in our culture, more is better. More of anything pretty much is better. But one of the things that I have experimented with, and this is maybe counterintuitive and maybe somewhat revolutionary, is I gave myself the freedom to do nothing. And as I allowed myself the freedom to do really just what I wanted to do, now obviously there are things that must be done. I'm not advocating don't do the things that must be done. The thing is that there are many things that we believe must be done that don't, don't really fill that category. And my intention for doing nothing was to wait until I felt inspired. And so much of our culture is really about domination in
Mm,
so many ways and will force. I'm determined.
right.
I'm I'm driven. I'm like committed.
Mm,
And those those attitudes are are ways that our inner voice gets silenced because we override it. And so what happens is that it stops talking because it's like you're not going to listen, why bother talking? And so for me, I've done that for a long time, or had done that for a long time, being an achiever. See, I'm an achiever,
mm.
right? So I have to do this, and finally my inner voice said, oh, okay, she's serious.
Mhm.
She really is going to just wait. And I started getting inklings, and I started getting inspiration, and I am in a more productive phase in my life than ever before that is in greater alignment with my own personal vision and mission and passion than and miracles show up, like
Mm.
crazy amazing synchronicities just keep showing up as you listen to and follow what some people would call intuition.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And as I totally relate to what you're saying. I've always been the achiever, the doer, the go, go, go kind of person. That has always been my approach. And it served me well in certain ways. But I think where the obvious lack is okay, I've got the thing, but how do I really feel in that thing? Doing whatever that, whatever I've achieved, how do I actually feel now that I'm here? And I think it's when you start to lead from the intuition, and really your heart as well versus your head and the force, then you're led to a place where you're really A, meant to be, and B, are typically more content and happy being. Versus, because I think what is really chronic in our culture is, oh, I got that promotion, now what's the next one? It's like we
Right.
don't stop to be, or I got the raise, oh, now the next raise, or whatever the thing is, it's just, it's crazy,
It
and
is literally certifiably crazy.
it's certifiably crazy.
It
It's
is.
so, and it's so chronic for our culture. It is, it's something that really, I mean, it's a very Western thing, in my opinion. I feel like in Eastern cultures, there's more focus on gratitude, and I think we're slowly trending that way. I feel like mindfulness now compared to saying mindfulness, I don't know, 2 years ago, like they're like, oh, you woo woo crazy person. Like, it's like,
Right.
okay, but now I think that if, or not now really, but I think Western culture and Eastern culture, like that focus on gratitude leaves you feeling more. That's why you can go to certain parts of the world where to you they have nothing, but to them they may have everything. And I think here we really lack that. We can have everything and still feel like we have nothing. We're empty inside.
It's because the things that we're chasing are meaningless.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to go get that raise. Why? Because that's what somebody else told me is the next pinnacle of achievement.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that big house. I'm going to get that big car. Or now maybe even I'm going to get that electric car, or I'm going to get, whatever it is, the I'm going to get,
Right.
instead of being, instead of a shift of being. And really, really, this is the shift of paradigm from that endless striving for things, for status, for something external, which is saying that my value comes from external judgment
Mm-hmm.
versus the presence that I bring, the awareness that I bring, the experience that I bring, the fulfillment that I'm capable of. So when you're listening to that internal voice, when you're moving from inspiration, society's values be damned, in regard to that. But when you're looking at and moving from that point of inspiration, there's a sense of fulfillment. So you don't have the need for so many things because they don't mean anything. We don't have the attachment to that, which goes back to the whole attachment to identity,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel that if you lead with your heart and what you're really inspired to do, that somehow it's going to make you an outcast in society, rather than trusting that it's going to lead you to exactly where you're going to be and where you actually feel fulfilled. Because what you're driving from is not what you're told to do, but it's actually what you want to do. But we've been so conditioned to, detach ourselves from that because, it could not create enough wealth for us, or we wouldn't be able to provide for our family, or, whatever the thing is, the limiting belief. But in reality, when you're aligned with, your highest potential and your own intuition and inspiration, it's going to take you exactly where you really need to be.
I think you hit on a really good point, is this fear of being outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that when you follow your heart, you are very likely to reshuffle your social strata, your
Mm-hmm.
social connections. The thing is, too, do you want to be a part of that society that is going to cast you out at the expense of your heart and soul?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm finding is that there is an ever growing tribe of people who are expressing their own voice, and the joy and passion that they experience is contagious. And what a wonderful thing to have go viral where people are expressing their unique gifts. That's what we came here for. I
Mhm.
don't believe this is random. So that we'll just start. I'll put that out on the table. I don't believe that there is such a thing as accident. I believe this is consciousness playing a game with itself for expansion. So that's where I come from.
I love
And I've found a lot of other crazy people that think the same
that.
way. So, I've been able to create my own little cultural circle, which is growing and growing, and life is richer from that vantage point. I've been on the other side of that too.
Yeah, I love that. I think there is an element of just acknowledging or being open to the possibility that there might be a level of detox that occurs in your life when you start to truly go for the things that you want that are really going to serve you once you're connected with that. I mean, I've experienced that myself. There's really once I felt like I was really getting in alignment with what really works best for me and what lights me on fire. There's certain people in my life that didn't like that. They're
Right.
like, who do you think you are to do blah blah blah, or
Yeah.
somehow it would make them, my win was their loss. There's part of that that's just a reality, and whether it's just having a high courage conversation with them to address it, or it's kind of just an understanding of, I always kind of knew this relationship wasn't really serving me for the best purposes. And some people, I think in my first episode, my high priestess of the episode, Taylor, she mentioned the quote about some people come into your life for just like a season or reason or something, I can't remember. And
A
I think just,
lifetime.
yeah, yes, thank you. And just really being in a state of acceptance with that, and just trusting that perhaps losing or distancing yourself from one person or group of people doesn't create a lack. It actually creates space for what's you're really calling for to come in, or to be created.
That's 100% true. And I think that that's also a shift of paradigm to the thing that makes some people feel that your gain is their loss. It's coming from a perspective of lack or
Mm,
scarcity.
right.
And what I experience and what I believe the next movement is, the more you are, the more I am, because we're all connected. So a rising tide lifts all ships. And as I'm more fully expressed, I give you space to be more fully expressed, and vice versa.
Mm, I love that, and I love that quote so much. You shared that before we started this, and I was like, that's just the most perfect thing. Just makes you feel good. It's like really that like girl power train that we're seeing more and more today.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to something. I think you mentioned it in the beginning more so, but when folks feel like they don't really have an identity, I've heard, whether it's through friends or just on TV or a movie or something, like, I'm nothing without you, or basketball, or my job, or whatever the thing is. So what do you feel like is a good starting point for people who feel like they don't really know what their identity is outside of what's been given to them?
That's freedom.
Mm,
As so knowing that you are an amalgam of all your interests and all your behaviors and all your history, that that's an expression of the light that you are, of life, right?
mhm,
And so the less and maybe this is a rather advanced concept, and I'm experimenting with it quite a lot. But as we are able to less and less identify with our roles, we have more and more freedom of expression. So, basketball's my life. Well, basketball is a passion. I really enjoy basketball. Who am I? I'm somebody who enjoys basketball.
mhm,
And I am somebody who does all these other things rather than I am a basketball player.
mhm.
Do you know it's kind of
Yeah.
the distinction? It's kind of the distinction between um, I am asthmatic. I have had asthma. It's a distinction between I am asthmatic
Mm,
versus I have a condition called asthma
right.
that people label asthma, or I
Right.
have behaviors or whatever.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, that reminds me of, gosh, I think it was when we were doing a community service project with a team in a leadership program I was a part of, and I think we were doing a press release for it, and we were focused on a local organization to Philadelphia, and they worked with children with chronic illnesses. And I think there was a big difference between saying chronically ill children and children with chronic illnesses, because it's like what the identifier is it's
Right,
like it can make kids feel like that's all they are.
right.
And I never even thought about it like that. I think it's the same, if you're speaking about different disabilities that people may have. There's a way to phrase it that's actually very powerful, and I'm a huge believer, as I feel like you are, that language is super super powerful and very important, whether we think it is or not, and whatever we say can really be taken as what we mean. So it's interesting that how even just like in the language of how we're describing ourselves, our identity just comes to be through that. So that's a very interesting way to put it. So what I'm hearing is like instead of it, not that it has to be as, I don't want folks to think it's like semantics, but I think it's just more in your mind thinking about it like I am not just a doctor. I'm somebody who you know helps people and saves lives and is committed to their health and whatnot. Like there's different ways, and it can be important because then that becomes all that you are really. It's like, and I think it's important for people to think too, like, what am I without this? Because I think it could be kind of a reality check. Like, what am I without being, without this job? Who am I really? Like, what are those? Not to encourage you to leave the job, or who am I without being a mom? But I think those importance are questions to ask yourself because it creates more balance in one's life and more connection to who we really are, that authentic self that we've talked about.
When you think about the life crises that people encounter, one is moving,
Hmm.
one is leaving a job, even marriage or divorce, death of a spouse, death of a loved one. These are all things that challenge our identities, right? It's like, I don't know, I've been doing that job for 25 years. Now who am I?
Yeah.
Or I've been married for 30 years. Now who am I?
Yeah.
And I think where there is freedom available is not to uh, eschew these identities, but to allow yourself to wear them as adornment rather than deep identities. That
Mm.
we have multiple faces, we have multiple facets, and imagine that these identities are costumes. So I'm going to go play basketball, I'm going to put on my basketball
Right.
outfit here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel like for me, so I'm a professional DJ. I don't know if I've shared that with you, but
No, that's really cool.
yeah, yeah. So it's so funny though, because people will meet me outside of that context and be like, you're not, that's not right. Like you get on Spotify and you make a playlist and you call yourself a DJ. I'm like, no, I actually am a professional DJ with residencies that I've had. And so it's interesting, like that identity of just who I show up as, and my way of being, how I dress is a big part of that. And then on the flip side, when I go to DJ, I'm not, I've gone through a lot of phases of like, okay, well, I'm gonna wear the same beauty look every time. I'm gonna have my hair in a bun. I'm gonna have these, cute glasses on. I'm gonna wear black only, whatever the thing is. And that's fun to do that and play dress up and be that, alter ego.
Yes.
Um, but it's also like, am I doing that for me? Or am I doing that for other people too? That's kind of part of, I think, the identity for me with the DJing is, am I doing this to make people be able to wrap their heads around more easily the fact that I'm the one that's behind the booth right now controlling your fun. You know, that's been an interesting part of identity. I think personally for me, that that has come up. But regardless, yeah, I think it's like I always say, like, I've got my, we're talking about consumerism. I've subscribed to that quite a bit. But I have, like, my work clothes for, when I go into, your corporate setting. And then I've got my DJ clothes. And then I've got the clothes I go out in, the ones I wear around, like, my family. And I could probably condense a lot of that, I'm realizing as I'm talking. But, but it is kind of like putting on a costume. And it can be really fun and lighthearted, or it can be like a lot of pressure for some people. I think it can kind of go either way.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to create an authentic self closet that is stripped of all of those things.
Yeah, that would be good. And actually, you brought up a really good point. Is it the costume? Are you wearing the costume, or is the costume wearing you?
Mm-hmm.
So, recognizing that you have the DJ outfit, that's kind of wonderful and fun because you get to go and be that persona as long as it's fun.
Right.
Until you get to the point where, well, people are expecting this from that persona, and have to I have to perform into that in that way. So then when you're recognizing that it's owning you instead of you owning it, then maybe you shake it up a bit.
Mm,
And what's also interesting on the flip side is recognizing how much people judge us by our appearance and by the persona that we present.
yeah.
And so, like, I have alopecia. So I was wearing the hat because I was cold, not because I'm trying to hide my head. But um, I wore a wig for 13 years because when I first had the condition, I went to a gym. I shaved my head because it was very, very patchy, and I don't have to do that anymore. There's just nothing there. But I went to the gym, and somebody said, out of the goodness of their heart, I'm praying for you. And I was like, oh, I don't want that energy. Thank you very much. Like, I get that you're being generous and trying to, but I'm not taking on that role. And so I put on a wig. And then for years, I wore that wig, and that was my professional persona, and it it restricted me. It wasn't just my professional persona, but when I went to bed, I took off the wig and I felt like a fraud.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Not for that whole time, but eventually, and I said, "You know what? What I realize is that this wig is it's owning me." And
Mm,
and somehow what was happening underneath was that there was shame about just being authentic in the world. And that's when I took off the wig.
mm. Yeah, it's so funny. Well, maybe I'm a little naive or ignorant, but I was like, wow, she really rocks the ball, because some women do choose to rock a bald head, and it looks beautiful on you. Like, you pull it off very elegantly. So it's so interesting that you wear it, it doesn't wear you, I guess, putting it that way.
And thank you so much. And that's actually a choice. I think that it wore me in the very beginning, which is what engendered that person's response.
Yeah.
And for the most part, since I took off the wig, I was like, I'm owning this. This is me. Here I am. Or this is just the persona. This is what's there.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not gonna pretend I'm otherwise, in other words, or that I appear otherwise. And it's very rare that I have people coming up to me talking about cancer. And
Mm,
now when they do, it doesn't impact me.
right. You can protect yourself from that. Right.
It's more like, thank you so much for your concern. I'm good. That's not
Yeah.
what's going on. And but
Yeah.
yeah, so I can be gracious
Hmm.
about it because I'm not at the effect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's like even just this choice is showing like you can choose an identity and not be like shackled to it. Because I think
Right.
there's a very big difference between how you show up within that, identity. And clearly to me, it showed up to me as like, oh, this is a choice. Like awesome. And as opposed to like in your story when that happened, it sounds like it was kind of the opposite. So yeah, and I think, and again, in what's happening today in the world, especially with young women on social media, and how it's very easy to just feel like you need to become any identity. What I see a lot online is and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that hoping that people are really doing it for the right reason for them because it's their authentic self, not because that's the mold that, that's the standard of beauty that is now in the world, with women getting, all types of work done. And again, I really don't have a problem with that. Like if that's really like, you're just like, yeah, I just really want to wear this in a way that feels more authentic to myself. I know someone personally who had that experience was like, this just doesn't feel like me, and has that kind of work done to support them with that. But then there's also like this mold of, lip fillers and, tons of work done when a girl is, 18 years old just to look like a Kardashian or something.
Well, and so the thing about that too, and that is cultivated,
Mm-hmm.
that is programmed. And my call is to reach into yourself and recognize what is driving that decision. Now there's a lot of social pressure too, because people that are overweight are shamed, people that are not attractive in some way or another that the culture is deeming appropriate are shamed. People, it's awful what we do to each other.
Mm.
It's awful what we do to each other.
Yeah,
And
it is.
it's superficial, and really it's driven by self-hatred
Mm-hmm.
and lack of self-acceptance. And so as we become more accepting of ourselves, we're better able to navigate, because either the criticism doesn't land if we receive it because we're whole, or we don't engender the criticism because we're whole.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think we're seeing more body positivity, like in this example, but there's still like there's another pandemic going on, but it's something that we created culturally, that's affecting people everywhere. And it's the crazy part is it's totally in our control to overcome that versus succumb to it. And I think that it's, really inspiring people to, yeah, I'm whole just the way I am. Whether, it's at this weight, whether, whatever it is, that thing is for you. And I think we're seeing that more and more. There's a lot of this like rah energy around like, women, girl power, and body positivity and inclusivity, which is beautiful. And I think there's currently still a little bit of a disconnect between saying and doing and really feeling and being. I think that's where we're trending towards. And allowing I feel like we're creating more room at the table for more identities
I hope so.
to be acknowledged.
I hope so. I've seen women be more vicious to women than anybody.
Yeah.
Um, I those aren't the women in my life, thankfully,
Mm-hmm.
which is no accident. But I think that we're all being called to live more deeply
Yes.
and be more connected to ourselves, to each other, to the planet, to recognize that we are all one big family, and the kindness or unkindness with which we treat others is a reflection of the kindness or unkindness with which we treat ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's like that. Do unto others until as they do unto you, or what is it?
Yeah, you're
You
right.
do unto yourself or something.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yes, something. Yeah, that, and And sometimes it's that we kind of forget to treat ourselves just as, sometimes it's kind of like we actually don't treat ourselves very kindly, and we put others before us, and we treat them with the respect that we also deserve to give to ourselves. So
Yeah.
creating space at the table for our authentic self to sit there with the things that we've previously considered to be our identities. I think that's really important, and we owe it to ourselves to do that.
And
And
when you witness people being unkind to others, you can know that they're not kind to themselves either.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know that there's a big wound there. It doesn't always help to mitigate their external nastiness, but you can, if we can cultivate more compassion for one another, it's
yeah.
going to be a different world. You know, one of the things you were talking about, plastic surgery.
Mhm.
Um, what I've seen is that people that have plastic surgery often get more and more and more. And it's important to look at what drives that. What drives that is self hatred or deep, deep insecurity and thinking, if only I'm prettier, if only I look better. It's not about, and I know that there are cultural norms and there are people that have a better social experience initially because of a change in appearance, but really we need to go deeper. We need to go deeper. And I'm not saying it's not appropriate in all circumstances. I understand the
Yeah, it's
dynamics of it.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I think the big part is whenever I hear, because I'm in Tampa, and down here it's like on every single block you can go get fillers or Botox, or it's like it's like candy on every single corner basically. And so I think historically I used to judge a lot, and now I really try to refrain from that. But the thing that I always go back to is the why. Why are you doing this? What about you do you not feel is good enough or complete or whole as is? And perhaps for some people it's really not that deep, or it's such a norm that it's like that question is just doesn't even land. But I think it's important for men and women, but mainly women, to really ask themselves, like, what is it about you that isn't already at the standard of beauty that you're looking for? And the funny thing is that's going to change. I remember in the 90s, everybody's eyebrows were really thin, and then now we want like the bushy full ones. But it's just, what is it that internally, what is it that you can do for yourself to really nourish your body and your being in the way that you're looking for?
You know, you just said something really important, and that was the change in trend and the change in style. And we see that with clothing and we see it with shoes. And what my what came to mind for me is question authority. And that is question the authority that is dictating those trends and telling you that your hairstyle is the most important thing about you.
Mhm.
And whether your lips have lines, or whether your hips are small or big, that these are the things that are most important about you, about another human being. We are at a really critical time in human history.
Mhm.
And just to drop down to the real truth of what's going on, we have a planet that is in peril. And we do not have a lot of time to turn around our behaviors. This COVID uh, event has been an opportunity to wake people up to that you can't go to the hairdresser. Okay, is it a crisis that your hair looks the way your hair looks when your
Right.
hair looks that way? Um, and we are having an opportunity to reassess and reprioritize our values. And if we don't do it, you're not going to have a lot of time left to worry about Botox
Yeah.
or or
Gosh, if we spent as much energy on helping the planet as we did on so many other superficial and things that wouldn't even obviously wouldn't exist without it, it would be phenomenal. If everyone spent that much time just thinking about recycling and being more sustainable. It's
well,
way.
yeah, yeah, not even recycling because that's sort of a farce,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But
sure.
yeah, but to be looking at real solutions, real issues, and that actually brings the thought to mind that all of this other superficial focus is a diversion, that is a deliberate diversion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when our focus is over here on how what do I wear, and what makeup am I going to put on, or what shoes should I buy, when my focus is there, then I don't get to look, or I'm distracted from the real issues. And guess what? There's some real issues right now that we can all really put our attention to and make a difference with.
Absolutely. That brings up kind of it ties into sort of a bigger thing that I see that society has really done with women is let's just distract them with all these things that we've always told them they need to
Because they're not good enough.
they're not to keep them down financially. Like how much money I think about all the time. I'm like the amount of money in the past I've spent on clothing, makeup, facials or whatever. Not that, I mean, I'm all about like wellness, taking care of your
Yeah,
body. That's great. You will never hear me regret a massage. However,
yeah.
the other things that we spend money on, we're marketed to as women, and we're told since we're children that we're not good enough without these things, as you were saying back with the advertising though. But it keeps us down financially. It keeps us down in our hearts and minds that we're not good enough, and that underlying tone. Someone may listen to this and think, oh, that's just an ad, it doesn't have that kind of impact on me, but it's conditioning over a long period of time, and it actually does more than we
It
realize
actually
when we
it
come
keeps
down.
us disempowered.
Totally, yeah, it keeps our,
Yes.
our attention elsewhere, so we can't you know really operate in this world and reach our full potential as a gender in being the recognizing our greatness. And I think it's amazing what is occurring now is that's becoming more mainstream, but it's also because there's a lot to make money off of there. It's turned into another way to have women buy t-shirts and things like that versus donate to a small business owned by a woman, or whatever that thing may be. There's still a disconnect and a monetization of women that's occurring that's really is really it's like a Trojan horse almost in some ways, the girl power movement that we're experiencing. In some ways, on some level of it, it's beautiful and it's very real. On other levels, it's just kind of another manipulation tool in certain ways. I've felt personally.
So the invitation is for folks who to take a portion of the time that they spend doing their hair every day
Mm-hmm.
to taking a few minutes online and looking for a place where you could have an impact,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's an environmental organization or a women's organization dealing with um, sex trade for and sex slavery, or there are so many things. If you just took 5 minutes out of your daily routine and dedicated to that, can you imagine what would happen if women took the focus off the way we look
Mm-hmm.
and put it out in the world? We would be able to make the changes we need to make, and we would be able to make them quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes we think it just comes down to money too. Like I don't have the money to donate to this. It's like your advocacy, your voice alone,
Yep.
sharing this, sharing a donation link or the message with 10 other people that you know. Or
Talking to a legislator,
yes,
right?
there are so many ways to actually do the thing. And what I've experienced a lot of just being involved in these sorts of things myself is that I do find a lot of resistance from women to actually doing the thing, actually supporting the girls' monthly education for $25 a month, and then, because of money, and then going to happy hour instead. And so if we really assess our priorities and how our actions are related to those, I think we would find, what we're really looking for, that version of the world where not only are we included, but we're super empowered, and we're, really integral to it. Not that we're not now, but even more so, the potential that women, I think, have in this world is still super untapped.
I agree with you.
It's wonderful. I love how we went from like the self-identity to like collective identity and then female identity. It's really beautiful, and I think for a lot of the people listening, it's really gonna hit home and find a lot of ways to identify with it.
I hope so.
Yeah, I really appreciate, Mira, you coming on to talk through this. It's such a joy and an honor, and my mind will be reeling for the next few days just thinking about some of the things that we've discussed here today.
I am so grateful for the opportunity, and I love the way you tied it all together, and it was very natural progression to look at identity and again just encourage people to question the authority of external forces that are trying to give you the identity that you have. Don't just accept it. Look and see what's truly you.
Yeah, and it's that meeting that external force, as well as meeting yourself gently and softly, and knowing that your identity is very malleable, and you can play with it in that way. I think it's that twofold. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and you're more than any singular identity.
Absolutely, yes. Not one thing can define you. Well, awesome, Mira. This is again a pleasure. So where can people find you? Where would you like to direct people to? Your website or social media?
I've got a bunch of websites.
I know you have so many, but they're all beautiful and different causes. It's because you're involved in so many.
Well, so the sustainabilitynow.global, we have a podcast, myself and my partner, co-founder Scott Billy, and also my coaching website is yourcoreconnection.com. And I've got a couple podcasts on Enlightened World Network on Facebook.
Awesome. Yes, those are great. I sat on the one this morning. I joined the Facebook Live for it. It was like a quick 15 minutes at 9 a.m. just to like really get the day going. I'm like, I'm motivated. I'm feeling good.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being there.
Yeah, and I'm excited for the one that you have coming up. And by the time I post this, I'm not sure if it will have occurred already, but there will be one on finding your tribe.
So this is a new initiative, actually. It's only the second episode. It's Thursday. Today is the 6th. It's Thursday, the 7th of May, 2020 at 5 p.m. Eastern on Enlightened World Network. It'll be a Facebook Live. It's called The Broader Edge.
Awesome. Yes, I will personally be joining. And
wonderful.
Yeah, I'm very excited, and I'll make sure to link it on my social even after it's occurred. I think they can go back and watch it. So very excited. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Mira. This has been such a delight. Thank you.
It was such a privilege. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of the council today. You can share this episode and tag me on Instagram at the DJ Genesis. That's the DJ JENESIS, or on Facebook at the Council Pod. Make sure to leave a review and subscribe, and if you'd like to share your takeaways or what you'd like to see, you can email us at hello@thecouncilpod.com. See you next time.